Looks like the ones that are in question.
Everything's in dev that I've opened up so far that is 14.4. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or 5 that don't have a milestone yet.
I'll say with the first one, access to feature via the API. Do we have, is the issue types table done? Is that work done, or are we just basically punting on the backend work here for a bit and just moving forward? In this case, access feature via the API would be not backend. I mean, would only be backend. And it was dependent on the types migration and stuff like that.
Alex, would you, I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you be able to give a recap of Friday's discussion in terms of where things are? I'm sorry, I haven't watched it yet or caught up on this stuff since being out, but it might be helpful just to kind of go through that, and that would help enlighten us to where we are on the backend side.
On the backend, like I'm not exactly sure where we are on the backend side right now because I was not too involved in the development, being in the workspaces. But the discussion, the direct direction on the discussions that we had on Friday was kind of establishing how would our GraphQL queries and mutations look like. Do we go basically coarse or fine-grained? That's one aspect. And I think it was agreed that we are fine going with the coarse-grained mutations and then using those basically as we need. On the queries, we also kind of established a way to be able to extend it further down the line when we get to the custom widgets. Again, this was mostly discussing things in general, getting down to the actual queries, how that will look like, how we'll be naming things, and how they exactly the data structure will look like. That's to be implemented and to be like gone into a much more detail. I think we have an MR that front end is leading right now with kind of putting in place how that will look like, and then the backend can adjust and do the necessary implementation of the API or the GraphQL API on satisfying kind of those requirements, those needs. But to answer Gabe's question, I think we do have the issue types table. I don't know how much of that is being used at this point. We do have the basic types in there, but I don't think the types are yet connected to the specific groups, if that makes sense, right? So we have the whatever types we have right now, issue, incident, requirements, but I don't know if that is actually used. Like we have the data in the database. I don't know if that's being used in the code yet.
It looks like it was. Sorry, go ahead, Donna.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I was going to say, it looks like it is. We are setting it, so we're setting like the work item type when we update and create issues. I don't think we have the feature type yet, but this stuff does exist. It's used as far as setting and updating goes.
Yeah, but I don't think any of that is available as part of the GraphQL, like the work item GraphQL API yet. And to answer your question, Gabe, on whether we decided to punt on that on the back end, I think the answer is yes. For now, like the discussion on Friday was primarily around the POC and how we eventually want to implement it on the back end. But no work has been scheduled to do that yet until after the any of the headcount resets or allocation stuff they're working on. So I wonder if I think we decided, which issue were you looking at, Gabe, that you were talking about specifically? And did we split that one up into separate current, like front end, using a mock back end implementation issue?
Just MVC1, like I think our goal, we've had a lot of conversations about, future vision versus what we're doing for MVC, but we do have a good MVC1 that Kristen kind of scoped out. And it's sort of taken a few turns and around the bend, just as we've talked about things like requirements and doing that in parallel and all this other stuff. I think, all of those things are valid, but just trying to get like it nailed down from a front end standpoint, what the deliverables are for MVC1, what is on track, what needs to be, like, what do we feel like is not going to make the cut for 14.4, and then how, like, what should we discuss in terms of goals for 14.5, even if it's just front end, from a front end standpoint, as it pertains to MVC1 and potentially MVC2, if we can start on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the question there is, like, we can add the deliverable and count it as deliverables for 14.4 for MVC1, but it's not deliverable in the context that, like, there won't be a backend associated with it. It'll just be for us to, like, using a mock backend, just available for us to kind of play around with, maybe locally. Like, are we okay with defining that as what is the deliverable for now?
If that's as far as we can get, I think it's sort of up to back end. I think this kind of goes into the one issue of within MVC1 is investigating how new work item types can be individually rolled out. So, like, is it possible to, this one, I guess, would say, is it possible to put anything in production behind a feature flag that's enabled just for, like, our own private group, so that we can actually test out via some URL param or have some way to access the new feature? Like, if we want to create a feature, how do we do that? And then how do we at least view the mocked out interface behind a feature flag, I guess, is a question.
Yeah, so I think we'll be able to do that even with the POC that Natalia created, which is behind a feature flag. Once that, it's an MR right now, but there's no reason why we can't, once we've kind of made some decisions or answer some of the questions that we had on Friday, there's no reason why we can't get that into production, turn on the feature flag for us, and then play around with just that mocked front end there. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, just trying to set clear expectations around deliverables and or progress, I guess. I don't like the word deliverables, but progress towards our MVC1 and eventually MVC2, and how we can, like, non-engineering people can play around with this so they don't have to go through and mess around with GDK and all that other stuff.
Cool.
I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
I
should stop talking.
I just linked to a comment there in that same issue that you linked about gradually rolling out. And I'm number 4 also is about that, but I'm wondering if we get more formal on capturing the default hierarchy that we have, which is like epics and issues below it and requirements on their own or whatever else we need to show, and have that display at the project level or the group level or namespace. It might help the users just kind of understand the world they're in and what these objects are. And we could even do that as simply for an MVC as just showing a like bulleted list of what these template hierarchies currently are. So when we go live with something, it could be even have a flag on it or something in the UI of the project settings that maybe says it's beta or it's behind a feature flag or being tested. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. We probably even need to be more explicit like that, because it's like a level it's a level before or a step before going to beta or having it really usable, because the data will be mock data and it won't have any type of state or anything. So like you could create a work item, you can create a feature, but it won't persist. So like once you refresh the screen, you won't have access to that created work item until we get a working backend.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we can capture the hierarchy just yet, though, even for the existing ones, because work item is based on top of the issue itself, and the issue doesn't have an hierarchy yet. So
It has
I
an
don't
epic
think-
above it.
No,
Are you saying because
yeah,
epic's a separate object,
Yeah,
that it's
yeah.
not the same, right? So it's like we've
Yeah.
kind of created this hierarchy. Maybe we could even
Yeah,
just
we're
show that
having-
in text though, like in the project settings, like epics are above issues, but not pull that from the DB yet. And then show the ones that are generating.
like I don't know how. This is where I'm having a problem understanding what you want, right?
Yeah.
I don't know
I'll mock it up.
how you want it to be viewed in the UI, because if we are talking about work items, you can like strictly think about issues, and in issues we don't have epics, we don't have requirements even yet, we don't have anything that has any kind of structure. It's everything is flat, right? We have
Right, that's, they'd
incident,
be their
issue,
own
and like
individuals.
that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there is no way, I don't think there is a way to do what you're suggesting yet, unless we just do some sort of a text. I don't know.
It might need to be text to start for some of them if they're not hooked into the hierarchy. It's like especially legacy epic. Do you have that, Gabe, that linear screenshot handy? You've shown it a million times. That one.
I have this one from Fibery, and I think it's basically like
Fibery,
as we build out these sort of the hierarchies, like showing what the type is and where it is in the relationship, and not like messing with any of this configurable stuff right now, like just omit all that, but it's at least showing the different thing, because then if it's statically visible, then you can sort of incrementally, iteratively build on top of it to add some of that customizability, which will definitely come way down the road for sure, to be clear. But
yeah,
I think it's just this sort of thing of visualizing the current state of the system. So as we build on top of it, this, even if we just start with a current thing, you can have a bug, you can have, and they're all flat, right? Eventually, when we have parenting, then you can show that what things are features a parent of the current issue or the current bug or whatever. So I think that's what she was trying to convey.
Oh, okay, so
Exactly. And
can you keep the
can you
screen
show it
on,
again?
please?
Yeah. Because epics are legacy, so they won't even be in this world, like the legacy epics. We're gonna have to like just put them in via text in something like this and say, hey, these are legacy, and eventually people will want to convert or move on to the new object, but we'll need to represent it visually so that they don't get confused.
Okay, so basically list every type here without any lines, sort of thing, and then for the requirement and epic, say that these are not maintained or something just yet, or coming or something. Okay.
Yeah, like just like foo is sitting there, that could be our new feature, that could be a requirement, there could bug, they could all just be a flat object, and we could just do a bullet list if we want to initially.
Okay,
So-
now I get it. Thank you.
This would just be a visual list of the types we currently have for the time being. Like practically what it will result in is just a flat list of the types.
Yeah,
Yes.
for now.
For now. It will also,
I-
people will want to upgrade to get more, or to add a different, eventually this screen, we can show different ways of doing products management, different types of frameworks you could convert to, or like move your objects around in the future.
Yeah, and setting like the lines aside across these, eventually we want to solve that. Like that's part of the roll up thing. But we'll want to say like, a test session and test case is not part of the same work item hierarchy is necessarily like whatever we want to call this. I called it in this diagram temporal, but like your feature and your user story or bug, right? Eventually we'll be able to cross link all these things, but just for at least like modeling the current system as it stands. So then as we do add these different things, it's sort of like we're incrementally building out the representation in the product, and that means deciding basically where we want that view to be, the sort of configuration or setting view, if that makes sense. But it kind of gives us that flexibility to kind of defer all the customization stuff, but still provide a clear experience to the end user about how the hierarchy works and which things are where when we get into VC2 at least.
So we might need, I don't know if this exists now, or if we have this issue, but we would need some way for the front end to fetch the current types.
I created an issue 3 weeks ago. I linked it in number 4 just for displaying them. So we do need the design for that, what it will look like. In the back end, pulling it. That concept needs to exist in the back end. The template
Yeah.
concept.
I also left a comment. I'm trying to find where I put it. About, oh, here it is. I'll drop this in here. I'll just share my screen real quick. No, that's not it. But basically being able to query the types and even the widgets within each one would enable us to like use that same API to do a lot of things like powering the tokenized search, powering the what we would like dynamically render and bulk edit in the sidebar and that sort of thing. I'll find the comment that I left that talked about it, but I think there's a lot of things that are worth considering in terms of how we expose like what that sort of type and hierarchy and widget schema is.
So coming around, we were seeing what would be enough for MVC1. I do think we should, if we can, just throw bullets up somewhere where we at least show the objects we have and we capture. This may not need to be an MVC1. We could go in MVC2, but at least showing how legacy epics interact with current issues, and then all of the other hierarchies that could be created. I think that will help set the stage with MVC2, where we have the hierarchy going on too, because all of those hierarchies are going to inform where you can add these other objects. It'll be a free for all to start, but eventually we could have more rules, I guess, around what we expose at different parts of the hierarchy.
This is going to be some sort of a config page, right? Where are we going to show this?
Either I think in the settings of the namespace or group or project, there should be a place where you can see that. We may want to add ways to edit or view it from other UIs, so it's more integrated or more people become aware. They could go look at or edit their hierarchy, but
like would you want to have it on the when you create an issue or something like that, this representation? I don't know. I'm just like, this is where I'm.
There could be hovers or things that show those trees eventually, especially if they're complicated, maybe to help people understand where they are. Alexis, I'm sure, has thought through a lot of this around parenting and how those different hierarchies interact.
Yeah, I guess it'd be like education on the ideal, and then also like indication of like where you are within the hierarchy. It'd be like two different things.
And handling the case where something's out of the tree that's in the wrong place, that's another thing that will come up where we can expose that in the UI in some way where they can take action to get it into the right format or the right part of the tree.
Or if we allow that, but I think we kind of decided we will, right, Kristen? Like we'll allow them to kind of like have things not in the right spot, but just call it out.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to encourage that, but probably during migrations or imports or things where people make mistakes, things will happen. So have to work within those bounds. But if the imports can guide them to choose the type and the place and it just goes, hopefully that scenario wouldn't pop up, but I have a feeling it might be an edge case. So I've got about a minute left on the clock here.
I think Donald has a good point that he's typing, but I'm going to sneak something in right before that, which is that at some point we probably will need to just sort of reevaluate our MVC 1 and 2 plans based on the headcount reset timeline. And given that like now we're sort of hitting the point where like we have to answer questions about backend that we just don't have the capacity to answer. So we've sort of pivoted, I think, smoothly to like front end is stubbing things out and working in kind of like a backendless mode, but our MVC plan doesn't necessarily account for that, or it's not designed that way. So we may want to just have a more like explicit, like, here's what MVC 2 or 1 and 2 are going to look like without backend availability. Given that I think the workspaces work that Alex and Brett are working on is going to take a while, and so we're going to have to just sort of continually work around that.
So in terms of timing them, if we need to add on a release, 2 releases, or 3, like, let's just be explicit. Is that what you're saying? Like, let's just get new buckets open and a new timeline.
Yeah, just so we're like being clear about the expectations, because I think we're trying to like maintain as much momentum as possible, but we just have to be explicit that like some things are going to fall through the gaps.
So as EMs, how about in MVC 1, realistically put the releases on that should be there, even if they're far in the future based on our original plan, and we'll adjust the envelope of the whole initiative around how much it's getting pushed.
Yeah, that sounds good. It may take me a couple days to get to that point, just because I have to catch up on what the headcount is like. I don't know, Melissa, if you have good insight into the workspaces stuff, but
I don't yet, but I think, Jake, what I'm hearing you say is like there's almost like 2 phases within MVC 1, right? There's like the front end pre-work and then the back end basically catching up to all the front. Yeah. And we just need to segment that way. And I don't think the scope of MVC 1 necessarily changes per se, right? But there's almost like 2 phases, and the second one is blocked by the reset.
Does everyone have an understanding of what we will have in MVC 1? Because honestly, I don't. Like, I would love to get this workflow frame thing. Like, this is where I start clicking issues in the sidebar. This is what I get, and this is what the other pop-up opens, and this is where I end. Because like, I don't have this flow vision. If that's only me, then that's fine. But my understanding is like, I don't see how we go from starting a work item and having the work item in a list, or where do we end in this MVC 1? Like, we're discussing the create form, we're discussing the view work item or something that I just don't have the idea. Where do I start? What do I click? And how do I get the form? And how do I exit the form? And where do I see then the item that I created? Where do I see it? Is it in MVC 1 or is it not? And it will be like super nice to have this. It can be like hand drawn, but like to have this flow for a user that goes through these steps.
It should be CRUD, like, and the things to support CRUD, and maybe the design team can create just a walkthrough.
But there are so many questions on when does this work item form appear? When I click on new issue, or do we have a different button? When I am on list page, or when I'm on a different page? When I'm on a list page and create work item, what happens to the list? And so on and so forth. We don't have the filters to show that item. And like, there are a lot of these small things where it's like, I don't know. I just don't see it. Like, I don't have this entire image in my head. Does that make sense at all?
It does.
Yeah, I think what Donald said, I think we brought this up last time too. And I think Holly's working on kind of like a flow or a journey to kind of show some of those aspects. I think that would be really helpful. I don't think
Yeah,
you're,
like having that demoed to have everyone like on the same page, that would be awesome. Maybe that's just me. I mean, again, I'm on the workspaces as well, and I'm trying to catch up here and probably just not being too up to date with everything. So I'm sorry
no,
about.
no, you're absolutely ask for that. That makes sense. I think it's good to be clear about, intended flows at least.
Yeah, it's definitely easier if we have something to visualize that, because I think we think that we have included everything under that MVC1 epic, and we probably have, but even now it's getting to be like there's a good amount of issues and epics under that epic already. So that's maybe also a thing that could be helpful as part of the product too, is adding some type of flow feature within an epic. So yeah, like you said, Alexis, Holly is looking into that. I'm not quite sure where she's at with that, but it's definitely on the radar to get a visualization up for that. Real quick, so as far as definition of done for MVC1, if we're saying that, or are we saying that MVC1 to be done has to have both the front end and the back end complete, or are we going to split that up into front end with mocks and actually implemented and able to be sent out to users?
For it to be done, we have to be able to use it or test it or try it. So it would need the back end. I think we could still phase these though inside the MVC, but we wouldn't be releasing it as a package. It'll have to be behind a feature flag.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I
sorry,
think done is like customers can use it even like if it's a beta type of thing.
So yeah, given that, I think it bumps it out, right? Like I mean, I think it's going to take longer than expected to get to that.
yeah, and then once we get closer to that point where we have headcount where we don't have the allocations to deal with, we're probably going to be ahead on the front end. So are we okay with working on MVC2 at that point while we wait for the implementation side of MVC1 to catch up?
I think so, and there might be some help that the backend team needs to do in terms of hierarchies and just making sure the right plumbing is there to do them, like more conversations around parenting. So they may have to catch up on MVC1, but also do a tiny bit of unblocking for parenting. Or maybe it will just all exist and work, but I don't think that happens. Parenting, I haven't seen as much discussion on it because we're really focused on MVC1, but that's something where in these meetings, we can start having more detailed discussions and just sync on what the whole team needs to make that work as well.
Since we're over, can I just recap real quick? Decisions made. We can keep working on the front end for MVC1. Done is when customers can use it, but that doesn't need to block front end from working on MVC2. We really need to get the kind of end-to-end user journey, at least flow down in some sort of diagram or visual so that everyone is on the same page. Anything else that is a clear decision that came out of today, or things that need to be decided?
We need that default hierarchy as well. Starting to think about it or render it somewhere. That could go live with MVC2, just as long as we have that concept coming.
Is that part of MVC2, you think?
I think so, yeah. Although when we do these migrations and things go live in MVC1, that's going to, we may need that concept to hide other things or show them in the UI, but we'll see.
Thank you for the recap. That was awesome.
Okay, and then I think the only other thing is what specifically from a front end standpoint, are we ready to start on anything in MVC2 if we're all done with this stuff in MVC1? And that's to decide. I don't think we decided on that. So who wants to be the DRI for? I think it largely has to do with how much we finish in MVC1 versus how ready we are for MVC2. Kristen, do you want to DRI that from the product standpoint? And do we have a DRI from the engineering to collaborate? And I'm guessing Alexis will be the DRI for product design since she's doing the MVC2 stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then on the engineering side, you could put me with help from Natalia, of course, but I don't want to volunteer with her not being here. So put me down as the DRI there.
Cool, done.
I didn't get a good sense of where we are with MVC1 and what we're going to prioritize for next milestone. So can we also take an action item for that?
I think that was the getting everyone to do the focus for 14.5 and just at least get the release,
Okay.
the releases on all of those issues in MVC1 so they have a home. Then we can see
Okay.
how far down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, to your point there, Melissa, it's also because this is not like our traditional to get out in 14.4, we have to essentially have it in production by today or tomorrow with the feature lock. Like we can technically be working on it until the 22nd, and if we get it, like if we get an MR, we can count that as being done in 14.4. Like, let me go through as part of looking into what the focus is going to be on 14.5, and then we can jot down what has been done as part of that process, if that makes sense. So essentially what Kristen said.
There's a lot in MVC zeros too that may be closable, or just getting on top of those two and just see kind of where we're at for all of them, for the architecture too. But I think what we're all saying, I'm going to share my screen really quick just to split. So here, the ones that are in 14.4, Donald, you're going to check on them. And then any ones that say like backlog or don't have a release yet, we'll get one, right, in MVC1. Or are you saying we might get all of MVC1 out in 14.4? No.
No,
That was
because
what I just heard.
There's
Yeah.
backend things in there
Okay.
too.
Okay. So
Yeah, we'll go
assume
through. Sorry, go ahead.
we'll just say we'll assume that this is going to extend well beyond 14.4, but we'll see where it falls.
Can we somehow label like back end, front end issues just so it's easy for us to like visually see what can be worked and what can't?
They do have tag labels for that. A lot of them will have both.
We could put it in if you want to view it from that epic hierarchy view, we could put it in the title or something if there's like specific. Yeah, we can try to do that.
I think looks like we have a plan.
Cool. I'll follow up with Holly about the user journey stuff whenever she's back from being sick.
We do have reduced capacity this week, obviously, with the Thursday and Friday. I'm sure everybody's excited. It's going to be hard to focus on work.
We're gonna party as a team and gather. I'm gonna be there.
Yeah,
we
that's
should
what I was
open up-
wondering about.
Open up a channel or